Beaumont.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Let me start by commenting on the previous speaker's contribution and say that if this bill, Simon Bridges, was going to get passed in this term, we might actually say, yes, there is going to be progress made. But the reality is that this has been delayed and now effectively kicked for touch, and we won't see any change for a considerable period of time. I want to actually start my contribution, however, by acknowledging the Honourable Leanne Dalzell. Leanne Dalzell, who the previous member was commenting on in a somewhat disparaging way, is actually somebody who has been passionate about this issue and has worked on it for an extremely long time in trying to get real change. As Associate Justice Minister, Leanne Dalzell in August 2008 asked the Law Commission to review the law on the sale and supply of liquor. She requested the Law Commission to provide robust evidence on which to base a new set of alcohol laws. Always a good place to start, I say. And Leanne Dalzell also introduced into the House the Sale and Supply of Liquor and Liquor Enforcement Bill. And she has continuously worked on this issue since that time in trying to ensure that we get robust evidence-based changes to law. And I really want to say that she has done a great job in that regard. This is an issue that does cause a huge deal of harm in our society. And one of the things, as a member of the Select Committee that heard the submissions on the Alcohol Reform Bill, one of the things that really sticks in my mind is a piece of research that was reported in The Lancet, the Journal of the British Medical Association, which talked about and compared different types of drugs. And the interesting thing around alcohol is that it is the only one that has more harm to others than to self. In other words, alcohol abused is bad for individuals who are abusing it, but actually the harm that causes to other people, whether that be partners, children, strangers, is huge and is significant, and it can be by people becoming more violent, and a lot of family and sexual violence certainly has alcohol involved in it. It can be in people failing to be able to adequately operate machinery and cars, and I'm going to come back to that point, causing accidents and harm to others. So I think that's a very important thing when we're looking at alcohol. And yes, I would agree that it is more complicated than tobacco. It is more complicated than dealing with tobacco because there is no safe level of consumption of tobacco. And with alcohol, we would probably, most of us in this House, agree that there are many people who drink in a way that isn't harmful, where they enjoy drinking and do so in a responsible manner. But that doesn't undermine the extent of harm that is caused in our country by alcohol abuse. And certainly, 30% of all police-recorded offences, 34% of recorded family violence, 50% of all homicides. ACC estimates that almost a quarter of all claims are alcohol-related and 70% of emergency department presentations for injury. They're just some of the statistics. So I think that's really important. And I have to say, I think that this bill has been the bill that has probably caused me the most reflection, has made me think of my own use of alcohol and thinking about how as throughout different ages you can see alcohol abused on a daily basis. Probably all of us know or are around people who abuse alcohol regularly. So this is something that's deeply ingrained in our culture. So I do accept there is cultural change required. I want to acknowledge a few other people. I certainly want to acknowledge the chair of the Select Committee, Chester Borrows. I think he did do a really good job and he's a very fair chair. And the other members. I think that we were all engaged around this issue and all reflected, I think, very seriously on the points that were being raised. I certainly want to acknowledge the work of officials. They had an enormous workload and we asked many, many questions and they went and found information and really tried to respond effectively to what we were asking them. So I want to put on record my thanks. And certainly the bill that we now have here for second reading is undoubtedly a better bill than the original one. But I particularly want to thank the submitters. So there were over nearly 9,000 submitters. We heard 90 hours of submissions. And they were powerful, whether it was individuals, whether it was community groups, whether it was medical experts, and everybody else in between. They were powerful submissions. This is something that our community recognises we have a problem with. It is something that people want to see real action taken. And I think of groups like the Glen Innes Drug and Alcohol Group, who both made a very powerful submission, I believe, to Sir Geoffrey Palmer and to our Select Committee, to submitters like and people in the community like the Oranga Society, who have been working with the local community trying to get less alcohol outlets in the area, trying to challenge liquor licences. I want to acknowledge them. The individual submitters like Gemma Bergen from Royal Oak, who came to our Select Committee because she lives right next door to an off-licence. She has a young baby. That off-licence often has very noisy surrounds and individuals who are intoxicated hanging around, causing disruption to her and her family. She has had her partner physically assaulted when he tried to quieten down one group. And she came and told us her story. And there were many personal stories, some very, very sad personal stories as well. And probably the one that was most powerful was the group of parents of adult children with fetal alcohol syndrome who came to us, who had adopted children at a point when that issue was not well understood, and had to spend many years trying to figure out what it was about their children that just didn't make sense, why these children couldn't develop attachments, couldn't behave responsibly, had real trouble taking responsibility for their actions. And that was a very powerful submission. So the submitters I want to thank for their time and say that it is very sad that we have not lived up to the expectations that you had, that the government is not going to provide the comprehensive response that you sought. And I think that is something that is a real tragedy, given this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, as people say. I think there's probably not that many times around social policy where in Parliament you get the opportunity to move because there is huge community clamour for you to do so. Often Parliament is legislating and there is fundamental opposition in social areas, and I take the smoke-free legislation as an example of that, where it was very brave, and in fact, you know, the world as we knew it was going to collapse because of that legislation. In the case of alcohol, the community clamour was for much more significant change than we are going to get. And so I think that while, as I've said, and I've acknowledged that this is a better bill than what was introduced, there is a long, long way to go. And some of the things that I think are worth noting: it has been 24 years since the last full review of alcohol laws. We have the opportunity with the Law Commission report, Alcohol in Our Lives, Curbing the Harm, to take a response that is both comprehensive and evidence-based, and we're not going to do that. I think that, you know, nobody here would say that we shouldn't be balancing the rights of individuals to enjoy alcohol while minimising harm. But the issues around pricing, others have spelt out properly that that is a major issue around people abusing alcohol. Heavy and young drinkers are particularly influenced by price. The commercialisation of alcohol and its accessibility, the lack of restrictions regarding advertising. I have to say, and Charles Chauvel just mentioned it, but the issue around the blood alcohol level is truly a tragedy, that we are not dealing with that when the public are saying to us, drop the blood alcohol level to 0.05 like most other Western countries. The evidence is absolutely clear, and many of us now know, thanks to the efforts of journalists and others, that you can drive a car perfectly legally while drunk. In many, many cases, that is an absolute appalling situation that the government is allowing that to continue. And the number of fatalities that are caused by alcohol is just a disgrace. And I personally feel that that is one of the biggest problems with this piece of legislation, that we did not deal with that issue. So certainly, yes, it is about culture, but legislation can send a very, very clear message, and we are missing the opportunity in this case to do that, to put forward legislation that will send that clear message, that will deal with the issue comprehensively, not piecemeal, and will really honour those in the community that have asked us to take serious action. So certainly what you will see from this side of the House, if we get the chance, we're supporting this to the committee stages.
Time has expired. Paul Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.